Hello, and welcome to the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create an empowering resource for those who wish to discover more about these topics. I pray that this podcast will not only bless you, but that it will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rough Edges. Today, I want to talk about having hope in difficult situations. Nowadays, there's just so much going on with the pandemic and just, global unrest. And it's very hard to find hope, especially during the holiday season, where there are just so many different emotions running through our minds and just having a broken heart and, just different challenges that come up with the holiday season. So I also wanted to encourage anyone who may be going through loss or a rough season. I am also going to share a poem that I wrote, which I was dealing with through a tough family situation. So I wrote this poem while I was going through a situation with my family, and although it was tough, it birthed something very dynamic through this poem. So I wrote this poem during my sophomore year of college, and it's been changing my life ever since. Before I share this poem, I want to mention the essence of hope. Hope is an indication of resurrection. Hope can bring a dead spirit, a marriage, relationship, job, family, and soul back to life. When Jesus rose again from the dead, he brought hope to all who believe and received him by faith. In order to receive that hope, we have to be honest with ourselves. We all have to face the ugly truth that nothing can heal without pain. I myself was broken. In my brokenness, I doubted God, I isolated myself from people, I thought about dying, and I allowed the devil to plague my mind with negative thoughts. I feared abandonment, loneliness, and getting hurt by people I trusted the most. I was so wounded within my soul that I began to feel numb within my spirit and far from God. I found it hard to pray because it became a challenge to even open my Bible. I wasn't myself, and I needed to be made whole again. Through it all, God never left me. I thank God that he stayed faithful. God decided to show his unfailing love towards me, even in my darkest moments. One lesson that stood out to me during this time was that nothing can heal without pain. In my own experiences with hardship, I've always wanted the healing without the pain. We all want the healing without the pain. I learned the lesson the hard way. Just like the woman giving birth in John chapter 16, verses 20 to 24, that's a scriptural reference in the Bible. It says that she couldn't enjoy the arrival of her new baby without experiencing the pain of childbirth. And that's a very common thing. You can't experience the joy of having a child for the first time if you don't go through the labor pains. Jesus Christ himself couldn't rise from the dead and bring salvation to the world without suffering on the cross first. We live in a broken world. Unfortunately, it's getting worse day by day. Although we live in a world that is suffering, hope is still alive. And it reminds me of a song from one of my favorite artists, Kelly Clarkson. She wrote a song called Piece by Piece. In this song, she talks about being abandoned by her father at a young age. In the song, she compares her husband to her father, and she speaks about being blessed with an amazing husband despite what her father did to her. As I listened to the song for the first time, I burst into tears. My soul was weeping because her story of brokenness rang true to mine. As Christians, especially, we always are taught to put a smile on our faces and allow the joy of the Lord to be our strength. But we never really take the time to encourage one another in our brokenness. So here is some encouragement from me. For every person in this world that has to deal with an emotional loss, just remember that you have a Heavenly Father who will never abandon you. Just like Kelly said in her song, He never walks away. He never asks for money. He takes care of me. He loves me. Piece by piece, He restored my faith. This is the hope that God brings into our lives. Mourning and grieving and even suffering is perfectly normal. Even if it takes millions of years, God is willing to put a broken soul back together, piece by piece. God is a very patient and faithful God. He will never leave you in your hurt or your agony. He will stand by you until the work that He began in you is complete. Although your heart is in anguish, God will be your strength. Without pain, true healing can never be experienced. God is near to the brokenhearted, and He will always be our living hope. So I say all of that to say, just to encourage you, that Christ is our living hope, and that He will always be there for us in our moments of need. So I want you guys to just take heart and know that God is with you in the midst of your suffering. Stay tuned, for hope has arrived. Hello again. Before you dive into the rest of today's episode, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support and for hitting that play button. If you want to expand on that support, here are 3 ways that you can do so. 1. Leave a review. If anything in today's episode resonated with you, or you want to share how the podcast changed your life, you can do so by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. 2. Check out our shop. The Rough Edges shop is a faith-based, women of color-owned online shop where you can get a variety of products from tote bags, journals, t-shirts, crew necks, and more. 20% of the proceeds go to a mental health organization. So check it out at roughedgespodcast.com/shop. 3. Connect on social media. Rough Edges is on a variety of social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and more. If you want to connect outside of listening to the podcast episodes, you can do so on those platforms. If you have any more questions or want more information on the ways that I've just discussed, you can check out the episode description or stay to the end for more information. Now, enjoy your episode. Innocent, 12-year-old girl. She stands alone. She's broken, hurt, and lost in this dark world. Her heart was ruined. Her life was drained. Her trust was broken, and only the pain remained. Her father stepped out on her. He caused the hurt of her mother and sister. The sorrow was piercing the young girl's soul. Only God the Father can make her whole. Her pure heart was shattered. Her glass walls were scattered. Her very being became tattered. 5 years down the road, fear and loneliness became her abode. Although she is older now, she can never forget the day that her innocence was buried into the ground. She stands at this tombstone with grief and disdain. Her eyes well up with tears as the dark thoughts remain. Her heavenly Father didn't forget her. He saw her in her mess. He kept her going through the trials and the stress. He held her tightly in his arms, keeping her safe from fear and harm. Although she is not where she wants to be, hope is still within her reach. She has a testimony to tell. She has a miraculous story to preach. Hope rises within her soul as God takes the broken pieces and makes her spirit whole. God's grace sustains her all the way. It makes her look forward to a brighter day. As she walks through the valleys and the shadows of her past, she fears no evil. She awaits the day where she will be free at last. Her innocence died, yet hope will arise. She is pressing towards the prize. God's grace shines in her eyes. Out of the ashes of pain and sorrow, hope has arrived. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. If you want more updates on the podcast, you can follow on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast, or you can visit the official podcast website at roughedgespodcast.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.